When I was 25 and a half, I started a podcast. The goal? To review some of the newest and latest movies, along with some other stuff. With the help of my guests, I was able to do this, but there were dark forces tampering with my podcast, and with me. They called it an improvised podcast for some reason. I eventually found help in the form of myself. Yes, the me from a universe where the movies I reviewed got delayed. Apparently, my podcast made it to his universe. I know now that it is my duty, for the good of that universe, nay, the multiverse, to keep recapping and reviewing these movies, to hold listeners over until they could eventually see the movies as they were made in their world. For some reason, they come out differently in my world, but it's kind of entertaining that way. My name is Steven Shinder, and this is Delayed Replay. Hello, listeners. Welcome to another exciting episode of Delayed Replay. I'm your host, as always, Steven Shinder, and we're going back to talking about recent-ish movies that came out in our universe. Last time we talked about Skate Jam, which was kind of an animated movie, partially. But this time we're talking about Sing 2, the sequel to the 2016 film by Illumination. But first, introductions are in order. If you haven't listened to the show before, maybe you're not familiar with this person. She was a guest on the Boss Baby Family Business episode. It is Kelsey Gitlin.
Hello, listeners. I'm so happy to be back.
Yeah, that Boss Baby episode was like a lot of fun to like talking about that movie. Yeah, that was something.
I still think about it sometimes. I'm like, man, I wonder if has Boss Baby 2 come out yet?
I think in that other universe, it came out like in theaters and on Peacock, but my other self hasn't watched it yet, so I don't know yet if like it's the same or different in our universes, but
That's
I mean, who knows?
That's true. I'm still trying to figure out the two universes thing. You're way better at it than I am.
Yeah, like I think at one point we tried naming them and then it just got more confusing. Like if you listen to the anniversary episode, which Andres was on, Andres and Kelsey are both co-hosts of Just Two Lads. It's a really fun podcast. Check it out. It got really confusing, like trying to name the universes, and I don't know if we came up with a consensus or not. But yeah, basically ours is where movies came out on time, and the other one is where like the pandemic happened, movies got delayed. So this is kind of just holding people over there.
It's true.
But yeah, so Sing 2. Before we start talking about Sing 2, do you remember like what your overall thoughts were on the first one when you saw that?
I actually really liked Sing 1. Most of the time, now that I'm like old, I don't gravitate towards children's like animation movies, but Sing along with what's that one with the fox and the rabbit?
Oh, Zootopia.
Yeah, those were both like two of my more recent animated movies that I really liked.
Yeah, those kind of have like a similar vibe to them in that it's a city with anthropomorphic animals. I definitely preferred Zootopia. I just love that movie so much. But the first movie, like I remember like thinking that some of the music isn't for me, but it was somewhat enjoyable. And I think a friend commented that they thought it was surprisingly good, and I was like, would you say it was surprising? And because the title, and they were like, ... yes I would, or something like that. But yeah, it's one of those animated movies where you kind of watch it and just kind of forget about it for a while, and then all of a sudden a trailer for the sequel comes up. It's like, oh, I forgot this was a thing.
I know when I was doing some research before coming on your podcast, 2016 is a long time ago, but it doesn't feel like that movie came out that long ago, to me at least. So it was crazy going back and be like, wow, it's actually been out for quite a few years. I feel like I probably watched it maybe that year or maybe 2017. So it's been a while.
Yeah, I definitely watched it 2017. Once maybe it was on Netflix at that point. But yeah, like I had a friend who said, oh, that like they recommended it, and so I eventually got around to seeing it.
Mhm.
Like Illumination is an animation studio where sometimes I'm kind of iffy about the stuff they put out. Like I really enjoyed their take on the Grinch, and I like a couple of the Despicable Me movies.
Mhm.
But like the Minions, how they like overuse them too much. I'm not a huge fan of that.
Mhm.
Minions: The Rise of Gru was pretty good though. I guess it's like a mixed bag. Like Secret Life of Pets, like both those movies were kind of disappointing to me, but
Mhm.
yeah, I guess we'll like go through this movie and kind of like go down on like how much did we like this one? How does it work as a sequel? And
Mhm.
like how does it leave its own mark or whatever?
Mhm.
Um, so yeah, and Sing 2, obviously, you know, these animals who enjoy singing and like you get a sense that they've grown quite a bit since the last movie, right?
Mhm. I do. It seems like many it doesn't really specify, but it definitely feels like many years have passed since that original concert that they did in the first movie.
Yeah, like maybe it's like the same amount of years in real life.
Maybe, yeah.
Yeah, and yeah, like I feel like however many years ago I think something is, it feels like it was like half the time when it actually wasn't. But we have Buster Moon and like all these other singers who he
Mhm.
has with them, and they want to perform in Red Shore City. You know, there's this wolf guy who owns this place called Crystal Tower Theater, and he's kind of not sold on them, right? Like
Mhm.
there's like all these rehearsals and auditions, and he's like being kind of mean, not being sure about it, and then someone's like, oh, what if we got Clay Calloway to perform with us, which
Mhm.
um is played by Bono from U2, weirdly enough. But
Yeah.
yeah, like I'm sure people have lots of opinions on U2. I'll admit I'm not super familiar with like the backgrounds of the musicians in U2 that
Mhm.
much, but I've gone through their discography a long time ago and I enjoyed much of their music, but of course it's like not for everyone, I guess. I don't know.
The only U2 album I've ever known slash partly listened to is the one that Apple just put on everyone's phones a few years ago.
Oh yeah.
That's like the only U2 besides like their famous they're like "It's a Beautiful Day" song that
Oh
they
yeah, I
do,
love that
but
song.
yeah, that's the only U2 I know.
Yeah, like they even kind of make a very meta joke in this. Like they're like, "Hey, remember when that one Clay Calloway album like 15 years ago became like it got released and put on everyone's devices? Oh yeah, that was weird. I kind of didn't like that they did that."
Yeah, it was a fun callback. I think one thing this movie does well both in the first and the second movie is that it almost like doesn't try and hide the fact that there are like famous actors and musicians that voice these characters. Like they actually imbue the world with things that are relatable to the human population that watch this
Right.
movie.
Yeah, because we have I'm not super familiar with this musician, but maybe I've heard Halsey, maybe I've heard Halsey's stuff, but Halsey voices the daughter of the wolf guy. Her name is Portia. Oh yeah, Portia Crystal. Yeah.
Mhm.
I almost said Lake because I was thinking like Friday the 13th and Crystal Lake, and
Mm.
I was like, wait, that's not right.
Wrong movie in the wrong universe.
Yeah, like so wrong. But yeah, I guess she's kind of like the fish out of water, and like not literally, but kind of the new character thrown in with some of these more familiar ones. How'd you think she meshed with the others?
It's definitely interesting because, just as a person, it seems like Halsey is one of the younger cast members. And I think that that sort of shows in her character and the way that she does Portia. Like when she is just sort of brazenly unafraid of things and is almost kind of like the sneaky one, like trying to get Rosita's spot as the lead singer.
Yeah.
It just feels like
it's kind of like big bad wolf symbolism, right? With the 3 pigs.
Yeah, and I think it's interesting when you're watching it because you're attached to these people like Taron Egerton's character, Johnny, I think, and Rosita and Scarlett Johansson's character, the porcupine. And then you see someone trying to like steal their thunder, and you're like, no, these are the characters that I like, you know? So I think she definitely had an uphill battle because she's kind of put as the foil to a character that lots of people love.
Yeah, I definitely feel that. I really liked her interactions with Johnny. Like, you know, you have that moment where they're in that cafe or diner or whatever it's called. I don't know the correct term, but where Johnny is just like all of a sudden breaks out into song and like sings "There's Nothing Holding Me Back" and kind of shows her like the full extent of what he can do. But what I found funny about that was like when we saw the trailer for this like a few months before it came out, that song that he sings, like you hear bits of it throughout the trailer against different clips from different parts of the movie, and it turns out that in the movie itself they have like snippets of that song spread throughout the movie, and I found it kind of distracting, but I mean, I guess it's kind of a creative choice to do that.
Yeah, honestly, when I saw the trailer, I was like, wait, Shawn Mendes is in this movie because they have part of his voice. And then Johnny started singing, and I'm like, wait, why is Elton John singing Shawn Mendes? Like, because he was so much into the Elton John stuff the first movie, and then he played Elton John in a movie in between these 2 movies coming out, so it was just kind of like a mind game for me of getting on board.
Yeah, because Taron Egerton has played Elton John in that one movie, Rocket Man.
Yeah, so I personally really like Johnny as a character, so I'm glad that Portia didn't like send him to the like evil producer side of things, you know, because her dad is such like a jerk the whole movie, I feel like.
Yeah, he definitely is. Like, he'll ask for a coffee and he'll like spit it into the assistant's face, and it's like, yo, that coffee's freaking hot, you jerk. Like, why would you do that?
And like when he tries to use his daughter against Buster, I almost called him Benny. Buster.
He does kind of look like a Benny.
He does, which is honestly, I have a lot to say about the casting because I truly thought that it was Martin Short who was voicing Buster, and then when the second trailer had all the names in it and it was Matthew McConaughey, I was shook. Like, I couldn't believe it. But
yeah, I guess because he doesn't look like obviously he's an animal in the movie, but he doesn't look like what you'd expect from Matthew McConaughey. And so like just looking at him, I feel like Martin Short would seem more natural fit, you know?
Right? Like I think it's also because Matthew McConaughey uses like his low voice for most of his movies, and here he's like actually engaging with the other 3/4 of his voice, so he sounds completely different than normal.
Yeah, I was just thinking about this, like he kind of looked like, if you don't listen to his voice and you just look at the character design, like I feel like if I had to guess another actor who might be voicing this character, I might think Dustin Hoffman. I'm not sure why. Maybe it's because like he's voiced Shifu, and you know we're both kind of in a somewhat quasi mentor role, like that Kung Fu Panda character. But like I could just kind of see it, you know.
It also could be like how he has the graying nose that goes from like black to white. You know, you're looking for that older guy, that like comfortable, like warm presence, you know. Yeah.
If it was a character who was like really unhinged, then I'd think, oh, maybe Jack Nicholson, possibly. But yeah.
Yeah, I think Buster's a sweetheart, and I'm just glad that he didn't get, you know, sucked in by what's the crystal guy's first name?
I think it's Jimmy, if I remember correctly.
Jimmy Crystal. Oh my gosh, he sounds like a jerk. Just his name sounds like he's a jerk. But yeah, there were some tense moments, I'm not gonna lie.
I did think it was funny that Jimmy had a cousin who had like a cameo. He seemed like a really nice guy, and he's the character's name was Billy, and he's voiced by Billy Crystal, Mike Wazowski from Monsters Inc.
Yes.
And he sings a song that sounds really reminiscent of Put That Thing Back Where It Came From, but like without worrying about copyright, I guess. Like, do you remember how that song went? It was something like, I'm trying to remember, like try like sing along with it if you can remember. I think it went something like, place that object back in the drawer.
It
where
doesn't belong to you anymore.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I thought like stuff like that is really fun where they have like cameos from well-known actors.
Mhm.
And like they even like we've talked about how weird it is seeing animated Simon Cowell in like
Yeah.
Shrek 2 special features and
Yeah.
Scoob. But like he shows up in this, and like what'd you think of the choice of animal that they chose for him?
You know, I was a little surprised because they made him a ferret, but like I also kind of got it towards the end, Like, I don't know, he seems like a ferret in disguise in real life,
When I look at him in real life, a ferret is not what I would think, but by the end of the movie, I was sold by it. Like he'll constantly make these snarky remarks during his various like guest appearances throughout the movie,
Mhm.
and it's like, you know what? Ferrets are kind of like, you can imagine them like sneaking around, talking behind people's backs, and it's like, yeah, I guess
Mhm.
Simon Cowell does really fit that.
Yeah, and the choice to have him constantly smoking herbal cigarettes, I think was just kind of perfect for like the artistic, like deeply wounded ferret who like has a lot to say. I'm sure they could do a whole spin-off of just the ferret character, but Simon Cowell would never sign on.
I find that sometimes they really push the boundaries with 3D animated movies, like especially these last several years.
Mhm.
I mean, Zootopia had that one scene with like the colony where it's like, they're not wearing clothes. It's like in any other animal thing, you wouldn't think about it because they're animals, but it's like
Mhm.
they really point it out, and it's kind of funny.
Yeah. I think one thing I do like about the Sing series is that they don't try to necessarily make the animal characters look like the actors that are voicing them.
Right.
Like Tori Kelly's character has like the flattest face because she's an elephant and like it just doesn't look like her. Like if you didn't know her voice, you wouldn't be like, "Oh, that's Tori Kelly,"
Yeah. I guess I don't mind when certain things try that, but
Mhm.
I do know, like I have heard from other people say, oh, they don't like how uncanny it looks or whatever.
Mm.
Did you watch much Arthur like as a kid?
Just a little bit.
Okay. Well, it recently got announced that it's ending after 25 years apparently, but
I did hear that, yeah.
way back in the day, I think it was like the early 2000s or something, there's an episode where the Backstreet Boys showed up, and I think they might have been in like animal form, but they make it look like their likeness. But what's weird is there's a scene where like Muffy is like watching the music video on the TV. So I guess if I remember correctly, it switches between their live action human selves in that video and how they look in their animated form. Like I'd
Don't
have to
like
look at it
that.
again, but
Don't like that one bit. Nope.
I don't know. I just always saw stuff like that is kind of, it is kind of weird. Like, I mean, I'm not like super knowledgeable about like Backstreet Boys or NSYNC. Like I just know that
Mhm.
one was in Arthur and the other was in The Simpsons. And yeah,
Mm.
another thing where they use the actors' likenesses. But
Mhm.
yeah.
I mean, I don't mind that for cameos, but like because the actors in this movie for the most part are like acting as different people than themselves, that's I guess where I appreciate them not looking like Matthew McConaughey as a koala.
Right.
But I did want to ask you your thought on this because I had some opinions about it.
Okay.
But the final performance was a lot, I think. And what did you think about like the whole medley situation that was happening?
I thought it was managed somewhat well. Like we already knew that because Clay Calloway, we find out he's a recluse and he's kind of reluctant to come back out. But like that U2 song, I still haven't found what I'm looking for. I thought that was a really great piece to include in this. But you have some like really odd choices where it segues into Poker Face. So it's like, but I still haven't found what I'm looking for. Poker face, poker face, ma. And it was just so jarring. Like people in the theater were laughing, and I was like, I don't like that.
Yeah, it's sort of like they tried to find a way to get the parents' generation's music with like the kids' generation, but they didn't do like a decades thing. They just were like smashing things together.
Yeah.
Which maybe if it had worked a little better, I would be okay with it, but it was a lot.
Yeah.
It was a lot.
Yeah, like there's definitely a way where you can get a modern song that sounds somewhat similar to the tone of the older song, and so they might fit well together. But these two songs, they're just stark opposites. It's just like worlds apart. Like, yeah, they've both been on the radio, but like what were the people beyond the movie thinking? Like they don't go that well together.
I don't know. I think honestly, like if they had ordered it chronologically, like they also threw like the mamas and the papas in there, which I get because they have like a lot of characters, so they want everyone, on there, and like the quartet makes sense.
Yeah.
But I just don't get how Snow Queen of Texas like plays into this whole thing,
Yeah, and they throw in like other oldies as well, like the Logical Song by Supertramp, which sounded pretty good, but again, like it felt like this medley was trying to do a lot, but they maybe didn't make the best choices of all the things to go together in the order that they did.
The one thing I did like about the last performance, aside from the songs, is like seeing the Crystal family, like both the dad and the daughter, just like be ousted,
Yeah.
I kind of liked that because I feel like Portia had a lot of potential, but when she kind of turned to the dark side, I was like, I don't want her to be let into the performance, and I'm glad that Buster didn't let her in at the end,
Yeah, because I was really expecting that she'd have like a redemption thing, but I guess this kind of subverts those expectations that we're so used to with like these family animated movies. And I had mixed feelings about it, but I guess watching it and how it played out, it's like, I guess I kind of see what they're doing. Like it shouldn't be like they probably wouldn't like forgive her like right away after all that she's been trying to do to like help her dad undermine them. And it's like, yeah, I sort of get it. The way that it affects Johnny, because he thinks that like there might be a connection between him and her, and then he's so like crestfallen to see that she is a terrible person, and he just like sings his heart out. And I guess I kind of have like this connection with Johnny just because I really like apes in movies, like Tarzan, Planet of the Apes, stuff like that. And so I guess I'm like just always rooting for him just for like aesthetic reasons, maybe.
I mean, I totally agree with you. I think it's sad to see Johnny like heartbroken because he's such a sweet character. I will say that the way that he found out that Portia was like not one of the good guys was pretty intense. Do you remember that scene?
Yeah, it was like when he has her because she lent him a black pen, and then he realizes, oh, I need to return it. And then he like tries going back and sees that she's like in a meeting with really scummy people who are just talking smack about like the singers and whatnot, like just not holding back. And it's like super, it really shocks Johnny to the system. It like really messes with his head, and it's just, wow, that's pretty heavy. Like you thought this person was one way, but they're just two-facing you.
Yeah, it was. I mean, I get why they didn't make it more intense because it's a kids movie, but I think it's a really good lesson to learn, as if you're watching it as a kid, like just because someone says they're on your side, like, doesn't always mean it. But I think he also has a moment with her where she does like do a little bit of redemption, where she was like helping Rosita into her like astronaut costume. And you know how her dad had sort of like messed with the rigging system a little bit so that Rosita like wouldn't be able to jump off and like fly down. And she actually warned Rosita and was like, hey, you should have your guys check this out. Like at the time, no one knew what it was about, but then they figured it out. So I did feel okay for Johnny in that she had a little bit of redemption, but was still like mostly bad.
Yeah, and I mean, her dad even has this line where he's like, let's see if pigs fly, and it's just super dark in a way.
Super dark.
Yeah.
And like the fact that he's a wolf doesn't help either, you know?
Yeah, it just feeds into that wolf stereotype, unfortunately. I also thought it was cool that they had Johnny sing a Gorillaz song. Like, yeah, it's kind of like on the nose, but like having him sing Feel Good Inc. in such an empowering moment, I thought was really fun. Have you ever listened to All Star Inc.? Like there's this YouTube video. Are you familiar with that?
No.
So it's basically like it begins sounding like Feel Good Inc. by the Gorillaz. Like it sounds like their music, but when the lyrics come in, it's like somebody wants to, it's against the music from the Gorillaz song, and it's so fun to mess with people by putting that on.
It's so chaotic.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh, I could not handle that. I would have to leave the room.
Yeah. Well, my former roommates introduced me to that, so I'm forever grateful.
Oh my gosh. Speaking of weird singing on top of music, I feel like we can't talk about this movie without talking about all the audition songs, right?
Oh yeah, like there's that Billie Eilish song, which I think Billie Eilish is the one who did that song for No Time to Die, which is pretty good. Mm-hmm. But this one sounded really kind of surreal, especially with like you have I guess it's a lemur or something, and it just looks really weird the way it's moving its head, and it's like, what do you want from, it's just really creepy to somehow, like I guess if that was their intention, they nailed it.
Yeah. I love in shows like American Idol the audition songs. Like it's almost more fun to see the weird bad ones rather than the actual good ones. So like the Billie Eilish one was pretty good for that. And also the like iguana who was singing Cher was really funny to me.
Yeah.
Like I don't know what his deal was, but he was kind of out there like ready to kill in his outfit, and then you hear like I got you babe, and you're like, this doesn't match, you know. What's up with this dude?
Yeah, like there's some moments in that audition scene where like the animals will sing a song that doesn't sound like a song that animal might sing. Like it's a stupid thing to say because like animals don't really sing unless they're birds, I guess. But like, you know what I mean? Like there's just something kind of weird about some of the choices they did.
I mean, I will say I liked the dolphin singing I'm blue, dabba dee, ba dabba da. I really liked that choice, especially because they like had him, or maybe it was a her. They had the dolphin in like this little tiny tank of water for its tail, which I thought was hysterical.
That is a fun song to listen to. Like I don't know what the song is about, but just the way it sounds, it's like such a bop, you know? Like you'll just have it like at some dance and people are just like really into it. You know, I was surprised that in the audition scene, you also had those like this group of bears where they do that rapping improv game where, because I mean you and I have improv experience, like they do that rapping improv game where they try to rhyme with a name at the end of the line.
Oh yeah. Beastie rap.
Yeah, beastie rap. And do you remember the name they're trying to rhyme with in that scene?
I think it was like Ted. It was a T name.
Okay, yeah, it was Ted, because they're like, I knew this guy, his name was Ted, boom, 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 boom. And then the next line, do you remember what the next line was? I think it was, I tried to call him, but he was in bed. Boom. And do you remember what the next one after that was?
Yeah, that was the one where like the tape stopped, because the littlest one was like, I'm in a coffin because I'm dead. And he's like this really little monkey whose like voice hasn't dropped yet.
Yeah.
So yeah, that was wild. And then the what is that called? Like you know what I'm saying? Like the record scratch or whatever.
Yeah, the record scratch.
It was fun. It was a fun one. And then I kind of liked how they like brought it back at the credits though.
Like it felt like a nice callback in the credits.
Mhm.
I know we're going like all over the place, but there's just like so much to talk about in this movie.
There's a lot.
Yeah. I mean, I know music has been a huge part of your life. So like how authentic did like all these singing characters feel like in terms of like, you know, performing and wanting to perform in the theater and convey like who they are and stuff like that?
Mhm. I think for the most part, it felt like pretty authentic. I would say that based off of just like the sheer budget that happens in real life, this is like a huge budget, like huge over the top, the costumes, the orchestrations, you know, there's just so much money being poured into this that like a normal talent competition slash like, I mean, maybe because it's the opening of like a big theater in like a New York City-esque place, it would be super big budget like that. But that's like the biggest thing is it's like, how do these relatively unknown people get this huge budget for all of these things, you know?
Yeah, it's like because it's a movie, like they kind of don't go into like the financial side of it that much in this one. Which is funny because like the first movie is like, oh, there's prize money, but it's more than we were supposed to give out, and yeah. But yeah, like it's definitely like very extravagant and maybe like very going all out, maybe overdoing it. But I think from an animation standpoint, it looks very beautiful. Like all the colors, like the fireworks and stuff.
Yeah, I like the like glitter wall, or maybe it's is like a pyrotechnic thing that like it looks like it's raining glitter, you know?
Yeah.
But there is someone I feel like we have to talk about because it's my favorite character,
Okay.
and that is Buster's assistant, the like old lady iguana.
Oh
That's
yes.
like crazy wild. Like she's wild. I love her.
Yeah, like you have that GPS scene like driving off the
Mhm.
road. It's just it's kind of predictable, but still really funny. Like seeing that character in action and like all these different
Mhm.
gags that she goes through.
I think maybe what I love about that is especially the Ferrari scene, but it reminds me of, I know that you've watched Sherlock. You're just like a person who I know has watched that show. When
How funny would it be if I just turned out I've never seen that show?
I would be surprised, but I'd still be like, all right, fair. That's fine.
No, but yeah, I have seen it. I'm
It's
up to
that
date with it.
it's that scene where what's the old lady's name?
Oh, Mrs. Hudson?
Mrs. Hudson is driving her like Aston Martin and shows up at Watson's house, and she's like, we gotta go. And it's like this huge police chase thing. It's just like evoking that sort of energy, which I love.
Yeah, I definitely get what you mean. Like it has that similar vibe. It's a similar type of character, yeah.
Mhm.
Well, at least in that instance with the car. But
Yeah.
there's also like the Clay Calloway stuff. Like he talks
Mhm.
about how he felt really down on like his music career because like 15 years before this is when you kind of saw the seeds of social media becoming a thing and forums and
Mhm.
stuff. And so like some of the criticisms from certain people on the internet kind of got to him and like it just felt amplified to him to a point where he felt like he should retire and that people weren't loving his stuff as much
Mhm.
anymore. And so Buster is an old friend of his. And like, what'd you think of how Buster like tried approaching him about his dilemma?
I mean, I think truly if they really were as good of friends as Buster kind of made it out to seem, like why would he send his assistant? Why would he send Scarlett Johansson's character and not just kind of go himself for the initial meeting. You know, it kind of seemed like Buster, for some reason, was putting off talking to him throughout the movie, which to me just kind of felt like, if your friend, like, again, and that's what I sort of struggled with, is that if he was such a good friend of Kay, like, why wasn't he there when he was struggling? Why isn't he the one who's reaching out? You know, it just seemed like maybe there was something that the writers were choosing not to tell us that happened between the two of them, like at some point in their history, that just made me question a little bit of Buster, you know, coming out of the woodwork.
Yeah, because they don't specify why he didn't keep in touch with Clay all these years, but I do think they convey that, like, he kind of feels bad about not reaching out to him, and also, like, because Clay seems broken now, maybe he's afraid of confronting him in that way. But I do think Buster was truly, he became a big person when he finally, like, went up to Clay to talk to him, and you know, actually decided to sing a song himself about his feelings of guilt, like how guilty he feels. And like, I know this movie has lots of songs that are like by other people. Like, it's pretty much like a jukebox musical in a way. Like, it's all these popular songs, but this was like an original song that they made for the movie for Buster. I think it went something like guilt is what has consumed me, my friend. I don't want this to be the end for us. I feel like he felt very sincere in that moment, you know? Like, I don't know if there were like any other lyrics in that resonated with you, but I really liked that song.
I mean, I'm always someone who likes to listen to the bridge, because that's usually like what us actor types would call the I want section, like where you
Right.
really reveal. And when he was saying like the evocation of like, you mean so much to me, like I'm sorry that this had to happen this way, but I hope we can sort of like turn the page and start again in a new way, and stuff like that, was just, which I think was a really big like redeeming moment for their friendship in my mind.
Yeah, but then it was kind of jarring when it segued into, is it too late to say sorry? And
Yeah.
I was like in my seat saying, damn it, why couldn't you just like leave it with the original song?
You know, they have to draw the audience in somehow, you know.
I suppose. But yeah, that leaves Clay to think about all that stuff. And he's kind of like home alone for a while. Like, it seems like he's not going to appear at the show. But of course, this is like that type of movie where he ends up appearing, and he's like appears as the majestic lion that he is, and finally like sings along with all of them. And he's like, I love the way the animators were able to convey like the look in his eyes when he seems surprised and excited to see how many people were like glad to see him out of retirement. And it's like all those doubts that he had about himself from like all those forums were like fading away. And he kind of comes to this realization where he's like, who cares if not everyone likes me? Like, there's still certain people who like my singing, and that's who I'll cater to. But most importantly, I'll also cater to myself, because, you know, with musicians, it's like, it kind of is a two-way street, I think. Like, I don't know how you feel about this, but I feel like part of it is like, you can maybe get some audience feedback, hear what they'd like to hear, but you shouldn't feel pressured to just do all the things that the audience wants to do. You should be able to make your own material, new material that you're very passionate about, and flow with that. And like, if it makes you feel empowered and it's like really great messages or a great way of expressing yourself, then that's what the artist should go for.
No, I totally agree. I think there's always that sense of like hesitation, especially when you get to like a certain level of fame, you know, like, this is my job, like, how do I stay relevant? How do I stay interesting? And I think that they do a really good job of portraying that sort of I guess, mental block that can happen through Calloway's character, for sure.
Yeah, definitely. Like that final performance, like I know we've talked about how kind of choppy it feels, like the different songs they use and the order.
Hmm.
Like you were telling me off recording that they even used bits from like Taylor Swift's album Folklore, which
Hmm.
I'm not super familiar with, but like what'd you think of those inclusions?
I mean, like, I get it, right? Because that was one of like the huge albums that came out like as that movie was sort of getting dreamed up in the writers' heads. But what I think I like most about the inclusion of that particular album is that they sort of did it through little like blips rather than huge verses or like actual musical stuff. Like how the hedgehog, not the hedgehog, the porcupine character comes out and she's wearing like the white cardigan that Taylor Swift wears, you know, as promo and press for this album was just kind of cool for like the younger girls. Cause I feel like a lot of the stuff caters to all kids, but there's a lot of like little boy stuff. And that was like a little girl thing.
I think there was a hedgehog, like it's a blink and you miss it moment, but people were pointing out that there's a hedgehog that looks blue, and I guess that's like a little shout out to Sonic or something.
Oh. See, this is all the stuff in the movies that I always miss. I think you were telling me something about the Boss Baby movie similarly that I was like, I did not even see that when we saw the movie.
Yeah.
But that's funny. That's good. We love a callback.
Yeah, I think it was like the B movie shout out that I put out to you in that Boss
Oh,
Baby one.
yeah.
um, but yeah, and I don't know if you're familiar with any like Yes music. Yes is my favorite band, but I found a lot of joy in the fact that they included a somewhat obscure Yes song. Like it's a poppy one, not from their more proggy stuff, but it's called Our Song, and how like at the end, like before the credits, they're singing it and they're like, Our song, it gives us a reason, our song that could remedy music and magic, that stuff of syncopation. And it's like I always get a kick of like whenever a movie or a show uses an obscure Yes song, not just like the
Mhm.
obvious like number one hit, but like this one like really fit well with this movie, and I had a smile on my face when like they performed that.
They honestly, and I feel like we've been a little bit harsh for saying that they're just kind of like pandering to the most relevant or like the most trendy music. They do definitely have some deep cuts in there, and I'm glad that one of those resonated with you. You know,
Yeah.
they're getting sort of their niche audience too.
Yeah, it's like they're trying to cater to everyone, but not everyone is gonna like everything that they're being catered, I guess, if that makes
Hmm.
sense.
Yeah, I get it. I totally get that.
Yeah. Yeah, like that was such a good ending. Like, what'd you think of the animation overall?
You know, I normally am not a fan of that. I call it sort of like shiny 3D animation because everything feels like so not porous, if that makes sense. Like it's so shiny and like flat, it just reflects like plastic almost. But
Sure.
I feel like maybe it just makes sense to only to me. But I feel like this movie is sort of like a great use of that animation because it is sort of fantastical and like making an alternate reality for these animals that feel like our world but not quite, you know? I don't know if you feel the same way.
Definitely feels like it basically could be our world. It's just slightly exaggerated in some ways with like
Mhm.
some of the over extravagance in the performances maybe, and also like obviously they're animals, but yeah, but yeah, I don't know, like I feel like I kind of wonder how much would we have enjoyed this movie if these were all human characters compared to them being animal characters as they are now, you know?
I feel like I would not be able to enjoy the movie. Mostly because I'm just a very harsh critic of singing. And so when they're animals, I can like let that part of my brain go. Whereas like if I saw a human face, I'd be like flat, you know?
Wow, very harsh.
Yeah, no, it's bad. It's bad. But yeah,
Yeah.
I agree with you. I agree with you for sure. I don't know. I feel like it'd be interesting to see this movie in like 2D animation and see how that would change it. Because I feel like that would definitely bring a very different vibe to the movie.
Yeah, that's a good point, because I do love 3D animation, but I also understand the point that there's maybe not enough 2D animated feature films anymore. Like there are definitely, or at least in America, I guess. I don't know about other territories, but there are definitely some new TV shows that come out that still use 2D. Even if it's on a computer or whatever. But with theatrical movies, like it definitely feels to me like there's more 3D animation leaning in that department. Um, and like I think back to, maybe we talked about this already, but like with DreamWorks, how they used to do amazing 2D movies and then they switched to 3D. And while their 3D animation looks amazing, I wish that DreamWorks and Disney would switch between 2D and 3D, like alternate when it comes to their theatrical feature films instead of just mainly sticking to 3D. And I mean, Illumination, I don't even know if they've done a 2D movie. I think they've only done 3D, but I'd be kind of interested in seeing what they could do with 2D.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like there's something nostalgic about 2D animation.
Yeah.
Like I'm always more skeptical of 3D animation just because we grew up in the era where every movie was 2D and that's like what we got used to as animation. Like I think they even did like maybe a SpongeBob episode once where they switched it from 2D animation to 3D, or maybe it was like one of the movies.
Oh yeah,
the animation.
the third movie, which came out last year, had 3D. And well, okay, so the second movie, they, when they get out of the water and become superheroes, they're animated in 3D animation there. But in the third movie, Sponge on the Run, which I did an episode about last year, it's like all 3D animation and mixed with live action as well when they're like on the surface world. But yeah, it is like I just want both, you know? Like,
Yeah.
but at the same time, I do think some people are kind of too dismissive of 3D animation sometimes, like just because it's 3D animation. Like when well, this is like outside of like what we're talking about, I guess, but just as an example, like back in 2008, like after the Star Wars prequel trilogy was finished and they were gearing up to make the Clone Wars animated series, which is 3D animated, they put out a movie first before the series proper started, and it was in 3D animation. And I feel like it got a lot of negative criticism, mainly, well, some of it was directed toward the new character Ahsoka, which I never got, but I honestly think most of the criticism was due to the 3D animated look. Like, I think at the time there was like a stigma against 3D animated movies, unless they were like DreamWorks or Pixar, I guess. Like I feel like maybe at that time some people were uncomfortable seeing other things try 3D or seeing certain properties shift from live action to 3D animation. Maybe that was part of it. But yeah, I do think it gets a bad rap sometimes. So I try to judge more by the writing and execution than solely based on which form of animation it is. Although it does help if the animation looks really beautiful, and it's another thing you can compliment about it, I guess.
No, I totally agree. I am very resistant to change. So 3D was was a big leap for me to make from 2D animation, but I totally get what you're saying about that for sure.
Yeah, there are really bad looking 3D animated ones, to be fair. Like that movie Food Fight. I don't know if you've ever seen it, but it looks like a freaking nightmare.
No, I haven't seen it. Yeah, I mean, for the most part, I will say like most of the 3D animation movies I've seen, I haven't seen Sponge on the Run. I will say that. I haven't seen that one. But like Megamind, I thought it worked well. The 3D,
I loved that movie.
it was good, right?
Yeah, it's one of the best Superman movies.
I do like how Sing used it. Like Frozen, obviously, I feel like it worked. And maybe I'm just too critical of it, but I don't know. There's just I like my 2D animation. I like it.
Yeah, I mean it's kind of funny how you'll and like you said earlier, you'll kind of critique someone singing if it sounds flat, but 2D animation itself is flat compared to 3D animation.
I know. I'm a world of contradictions, Steven. You know this. That's why I'm on here to add a little spice to the narrative.
Yeah, I mean, I'm a world of contradictions myself. Yeah, I totally feel.
There you go. You understand.
All right. So, unless there's any other aspect you want to talk about, we could go into like final thoughts and score out of 10.
I'm down to do final thoughts. I feel like we covered a lot.
Yeah. Okay, so what are your final thoughts and score out of 10 and unit of measurement for that score?
Despite some musical like interesting choices, I still enjoyed the movie because I think at the core of it, the characters are good and for the most part pretty relatable. Like I feel like you have a moment in the movie where you're like, oh yeah, I like get where this character's coming from for almost every character. So for that, I would probably give it 7.5 fireworks out of 10.
Yeah, I mean, we even have that Katy Perry song "Firework" in the movie, so
It's true. It's true.
yeah.
What about you?
I agree. Some of the musical transitions were pretty jarring, but at the same time, I think this was a bit of a step up over the first one. Like, there was more stuff for me to enjoy in this movie. Like, there were even emotional moments where, like, I related to, like, what was going on. It felt kind of like when I watched La La Land a few years ago, and during the song Audition toward the end, it was like, yo, I feel that. And it's like, you have bits of that in this movie, maybe not to the same extent, but it was definitely enjoyable. I have seen better movies, but it was fun for what it was, I suppose. So I'm giving Sing 2 7.75 microphones out of 10.
There you go.
Yeah.
Love it. So it evens out to about 7.625.
625, yeah.
I think that's pretty good. That's better than Rotten Tomatoes probably gave it.
Yeah, I was looking at the Rotten Tomatoes score for it, and it was like 60% for critics and like 70 for audience. So it is slightly better, like on both counts, I guess.
There you go. We are bigger Sing 2 stands than the majority of the population.
Yeah. But yeah, I guess that'll do it. Thanks for guesting again, Kelsey. Where can people find your stuff?
You can find mine and another esteemed guest, Andres' podcast, pretty much everywhere is at Just Two Lads Podcast. If you're interested in following me, you can find me at Kelsey Gitlin pretty much everywhere as well.
Yeah, like you've been doing various acoustic performances in different videos, right?
Yeah. Yeah, you can follow me on YouTube if you want to.
Yeah, those are always fun. Yeah. And as for me, people can follow me at Steven Shinder on Instagram and Twitter, Steven Shinder Storytelling on Facebook. Go to stevenshinder.com if you want to see info on my book. More info to come on the next one, hopefully in the near future. And yeah, Kelsey is doing like the raising hands and support thing.
Raise the roof?
Yeah, raise the roof. That's what it's called. Yeah, I was trying to figure out like what it's called. Yeah. I'm so not hip these days. But
Favorite band is Yes, Steven.
yeah, my favorite band is a 53-year-old progressive
Yeah.
rock band called Yes. Which, speaking of which, me and my dad have a podcast called Yes Shift. It's all one word, YESSHIFT. You can find that pretty much anywhere. You could go to anchor.fm and it'll show you all the places it's on. Yeah, lots of great topics, talk about music and the musicians and whatnot. And you can also find, anything else I'm involved with, I'll just link in the show notes, I guess. And you can email delayedreplaypodcast@gmail.com if you would like to send feedback on any of our coverage. I don't know, your favorite songs, music artists, whatever. Might read it on the show. We'll see.
But if you critique me, I will cry, so be nice to me.
Yeah, if they critique you too badly, that's probably not gonna happen. I'll just like click the spam thing.
Love that. Thank you.
Yeah. And the next episode will be on Reminisce. And yeah, without further delay, have a good day.
Bye.